Tonight we slip into the quiet, oil-lit lanes of Edo, not as a samurai or a geisha, but as someone whose hands shape the very light they move by. You are a lantern maker, a chochinsha, in the bustling heart of the 18th century shogunate. Around you, the city breathes, a low hum of nocturnal commerce, the distant pluck of a shamisen, the call of a night watchman. But here, in your tiny, paper-walled workshop attached to your home, the air is still, thick with the scent of bamboo shavings and rice glue. You can feel the grit of wood dust under your fingernails, a permanent tattoo of your trade. This is a world of precise, repetitive motion, where a single shaky hand means a wasted day and a hungry family. It's a beautiful craft, sure, but let's be honest. The constant fear of setting your entire city block on fire with one careless spark would probably fray your modern nerves to ribbons. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't so much wake as you are assembled by the sounds. It's still dark, that deep indigo that's more a feeling than a color. The first cue isn't an alarm, but the heavy, rhythmic thump-thump-thump from the miso shop next door, the sound of apprentices pounding soybeans into paste. It's followed by the rasping cough of the old man across the lane, a clockwork symptom you've heard every morning for a decade. You unfold from your thin futon on the tatami, your back issuing a series of polite pops that map the previous day's labor, hours bent over a frame, shoulders tensed while painting sealant. The air is cool and carries the night's lingering smells, damp earth from the shallow drainage gutter out front, the faint, sour tang of the communal latrine, and the ever-present, comforting smell of cured bamboo and paper from your own stock. You slide open the shoji screen, not to a view, but to a chore. Mourning in the Edo period, especially for a shonen townsman like you, is a ritual of necessity, not mindfulness. Your first task is to check the hibachi, the charcoal brazier that's the literal and figurative hearth of your home. The coals are just ghosts of warmth, a few orange embers winking in the ash. You blow on them gently, your breath the first instrument of the day, before adding a few precious pieces of new charcoal. Fire is your ally and your tyrant. You need it to cook, to heat glue, to work in the winter, to see after sunset. But one stray ember, one moment of inattention, and your world, a densely packed warren of wood, paper, and thatched roofs, can vanish in a toka, a city fire, in minutes. Historians still argue whether the famed Edo firefighting brigades, the Haikusha, were more effective at saving structures or at spectacular, performative crowd control. You pad to the front of your mise, your shop-facing room, and slide open the main wooden lattices. Your quarter is just stirring. A few doors down, the apprentice at the soba noodle shop is sluicing water across the stone step. A fishmonger's wife, her sleeves tied back, arranges gleaming silver ayu on a bed of fern. You nod, a silent exchange that requires no words. This is your nakama, your circle. You are all bound not just by proximity, but by the stringent, oppressive, and oddly efficient class laws of the Tokugawa shogunate. As an artisan, your clothing, the size of your home, even the type of wood you can use in your doorframe, are dictated by sumptuary edicts. You can't wear flashy silks like a merchant, nor carry swords like a samurai. Your wealth is measured in skill and reputation, not in ostentatious display. Those very laws might have forbidden you a fancy gait, but they couldn't stop your competitive spirit. Lantern makers like you often competed through subliminal advertising, crafting a signature, incredibly intricate andan, a standing lantern, to display in your shop front, a subtle middle finger to the plain gates you were forced to build. You fetch water from the shared well at the lane's end, the rope rough in your palms. The bucket comes up heavy, cold, and clear. This, too, is a mainstream historical fact of daily life. Edo had one of the world's first sophisticated urban water supply systems, the Kanda Josui and Tamagawa Josui aqueducts, channeling water from distant rivers into neighborhood cisterns and wells. But by the time it reaches your bucket, it's shared by dozens of households. You're not thinking of engineering marvels, though. You're thinking of the clay jar you'll fill, the rice you'll rinse for the morning pot, and the stubborn, gluey paste you'll need to scrub from your hands later. The workday hasn't officially begun, but your body is already in motion, a gear in the quiet, waking machine of the city. The single, wispy trail of smoke from your hibachi is now a steady, heat-wavering column. You've fed it carefully, building a small but potent heart of fire in the center of the charcoal. This isn't for warmth or cooking yet, this is your forge. You move the brazier to the center of your workshop floor, the packed earth swept clean of yesterday's debris. Around it, your tools are laid out with a monk's precision, a set of worn but sharp corner planes, a variety of knives with handles darkened by sweat and grip, bundles of bamboo poles leaning in the corner like spears in an arsenal. The first true fire of the workday must be purpose-made, and its first purpose is for the glue. You fetch a small, soot-blackened iron pot, its bottom permanently stained from 1,000 previous simmerings. This isn't just any pot, it's the alchemist's cauldron of your craft. You place it directly onto the glowing charcoal, the iron ticking as it heats. From a sealed ceramic jar, you scoop a measure of clean water into the pot. Then comes the waiting. You don't just sit idle, though. You use this time of rising heat to inspect your primary material, bamboo. You walk to the bundled poles, each about the length of your arm span, and run your hands over their nodes. The skin is cool, smooth, and hard as bone. You selected these yourself from a supplier up the Sumida River, choosing for straightness, age, and the specific distance between the rings. A bamboo pole with nodes too close together is stubborn and brittle, too far apart, and it lacks tensile strength. It's a choice you made weeks ago, and now its consequences will be felt in your fingers all day. The water in the pot begins to shiver, then releases a few lazy bubbles. It's time. You reach for another, much smaller jar, this one lidded tightly with waxed paper and cord. Inside is a substance that looks like misshapen amber pebbles or strange, translucent fungi. This is Nikawa, animal glue. The mainstream historical fact here is that before modern synthetic adhesives, the world ran on glue derived from collagen, boiled from the skins, bones, and connective tissues of animals. In Japan, the most common source was deer or cow hides and fish bladders. Yours, you suspect from its particular pungency when wet, is the latter. You drop several lumps into the hot water and immediately the smell changes. The clean, mineral scent of heating water is joined by a deep, briny, organic odor, not quite fishy, but profoundly of the body. It's the smell of something being transformed, broken down to its most useful essence. As the glue melts into a viscous, honey-brown liquid, you stir it slowly with a flat wooden paddle. This is a critical moment. The heat must be consistent, gentle. Too hot, and the glue breaks, its binding properties destroyed, leaving you with a worthless, stinky sludge. Too cool, and it remains lumpy and weak. You manage the fire with practiced tweaks, adding a pinch of ash here, shifting a charcoal piece there. The glue must reach a specific, perfect consistency, thick enough to coat your finger and form a stringy web when you lift the paddle, but fluid enough to spread thinly and soak into paper. There's no thermometer but your eyes and your nose. Historians still argue whether the specific recipes and temperatures for crafts like this were passed down through precise oral instruction or through sheer, repetitive, often costly, trial and error. While the glue reaches its peak, you perform a related, grimly practical task. From a shelf, you take down a worn wooden box. Inside, nestled in straw, are your brushes. Their bamboo handles are smooth. but the bristles are stiff, clumped from yesterday's work. You don't clean them with water. Water would swell and ruin the wooden hair. Instead, you pick up a small, soft cloth and a bottle of your own urine. It's not a practice discussed in polite company, but among many Edo period artisans, especially painters and lacquerers, stale urine, known as shonyo, was a common, readily available solvent for cleaning protein-based glues and paints. The ammonia breaks down the dried adhesive without damaging the brush. You dampen the cloth and work it through the bristles, the sharp, acrid smell briefly cutting through the glue's broth-like aroma. It's efficient, free, and a reminder that in your world, nothing, absolutely nothing, is wasted. The glue is ready. A skin has formed on its surface, which you skim off with the edge of your paddle. The pot burbles contentedly. This simmering pot is now the sovereign of your space. Every other action will orbit around it, timed against its cooling. You've made your first fire, and conjured the sticky spirit that will bind insubstantial paper to a skeletal frame, creating an object of light. The city outside is fully awake now, a symphony of shouts, rolling cartwheels, and street vendors' songs. But in your workshop, the world has narrowed to this pot, these tools, and the bamboo waiting to be split. The quiet, methodical violence of shaping is next. With the glue pot maintaining its gentle, burbling vigil, you turn to the bamboo. You select a single pole, hefting its weight. It's not heavy, but there's a dense, latent energy in it, a spring-loaded potential. This is where the lantern stops being an idea and starts becoming a physical fact. Your first tool isn't a knife, but a short, stout blade with a curved tip, called a kiri. You place the pole on a low cutting block, find a point just past a node, and with a firm, twisting pressure, you make the initial cut. The sound is a satisfying, fibrous snap. You now have a section about the length of your forearm. This will become the hoops, the rigid circular bands that give the lantern its shape. But bamboo as it grows is a cylinder, a tube. You need flat, pliable strips. This is achieved through a process of controlled destruction. You take your section and, with a smaller, incredibly sharp knife, you score a line along its length. Then, you insert the blade's tip into the score at the top, and with a careful, prying motion, you start a split. This is the moment of truth. If the grain is true and your blade is aligned, the split travels down the length of the section with a series of crisp, popping sounds, dividing it neatly in two. If the grain spirals or you twist your wrist, the split runs wild, jagged, ruining the piece. You work methodically, halving, then quartering, then splitting each quarter into eighths. Each piece, now a long, curved slat, is called a warigo. The real magic, however, happens next. Each of these slats has an outer skin, hard and waxy, and an inner pith, soft and spongy. For a lantern rib, you need only the skin, the strongest, most flexible part. You sit on your low stool, take a slat, and brace one end against a metal hook set into your workbench. Over this hook, you pull the bamboo. The motion is a draw, like a violinist with a bow, but you're not making music, you're stripping away weakness. Your other hand holds a specialized plane, a hoe, its blade set at a precise, shallow angle. As you draw the bamboo towards you, the blade skims off the soft inner material, sending up a curl of pale, almost golden shaving. The sound is a soft, continuous sh, like a whisper. With each pass, the slat becomes thinner, more uniform, more responsive. You are not just shaping it, you are revealing its true, resilient nature. This is repetitive, meditative, and utterly demanding work. Your shoulders burn. Your forearms tighten. 1,000 tiny bamboo fibers dust the air, catching the light from the open screen. You breathe them in, they tickle your throat. This is the dust of the craft, and it's in your lungs, your hair, the lines of your face. A mainstream historical fact about Edo artisans is that such specialized, repetitive labor often led to pronounced physical deformities or ailments over a lifetime. Carpenters with one oversized arm, dyers with stained, cracked hands, or lantern makers like you, perhaps, with a permanent squint and a slight, forward-curving hunch from hours at the bench. Your body literally molds itself to your trade. You don't work on just one rib at a time. You work in batches, moving through the stages like an assembly line centuries before the term was invented. Split, rough shape, plane to final dimension. The pile of discarded pith and shavings grows at your feet, a soft, fragrant mound. The pile of finished ribs grows beside you, slender, graceful, and impossibly strong. Each one is a tiny arc of potential. If you bend one, it will resist fiercely, then spring back to true. This resilience is the secret of the choching. It can be collapsed flat, folded down into a tight disc for storage or travel, and then, with a flick of the wrist, sprung back into its perfect cylindrical shape. That iconic sproing GG sound of an opening lantern? It comes from the memory in this bamboo, memory you've painstakingly revealed with your plane. The finest lantern makers were said to be able to judge the quality of their work by sound alone. A well-planed rib, when flicked with a fingernail, would produce a clear, high-pitched ping, a specific note of readiness. An underworked rib would thud dully. An overworked, too-thin one would sound frail and tinny. It was an unofficial quality check, a tiny concert of craftsmanship before the assembly even began. You might test one now, holding it to your ear like a seashell, listening not for the ocean, but for the song of a job done right. The glue pot continues to simmer, its smell now a familiar background note to the sharper, greener scent of freshly split bamboo. The bones are ready. Now, they need to be given a spine and tied together with sinew. The glue pot has now settled into a state of perfect, lazy activity, a thick meniscus of adhesive slowly rolling over itself like a tar pit in miniature. Its smell is pervasive, a warm, leathery funk that has seeped into the wooden beams of your workshop. It's time to introduce the other binding agent, the one that will literally hold the skeleton together before the paper skin is applied. You reach for a spool of material that looks, at first glance, like a thick, tan thread. This is ito, but it's not spun from cotton or hemp. You unwind a length and feel its slightly rough, irregular texture. This is kawaito, dried strips of animal intestine, usually deer or sometimes wild boar. When dampened, it becomes incredibly strong, pliable, and, crucially, it shrinks slightly as it dries, pulling joints ever tighter. It's the sinew of your craft, the ligaments for your bamboo bones. You cut a length and drop it into a shallow bowl of warm water next to the glue pot. As it soaks, it softens from a stiff string into a supple, almost living cord. This is where the high-stakes assembly begins. You clear a large, flat space on your workbench, sweeping away the bamboo dust with the side of your hand. From your pile of finished ribs, you select two of the longest, straightest pieces. These will be the vertical standards, the central spines of the lantern frame. You lay them parallel, a precise hand width apart. Now, you take one of your pre-formed bamboo hoops, the circles you split and bent earlier, their ends seamlessly lashed with a slip joint so clever it's invisible. You place this hoop at what will be the top of the lantern, perpendicular to the spines. The real test of dexterity starts now. Your left hand holds the hoop and spine together in a perfect right angle. Your right hand fishes the soaked kawaito from the bowl. It feels slippery, slightly gelatinous. You wrap it once, twice, in a specific crisscross pattern around the joint, pulling it taut with each pass. This isn't just tying a knot, it's creating a miniature, structural web. The tension must be even, consistent. Too loose, and the joint will wobble, making the whole lantern sloppy. Too tight, and you risk cracking the carefully planed bamboo. You tie it off with a special knot that locks under its own tension, a knot you learned by feel years before you understood its geometry. You repeat this for the other side of the hoop. Now you have a loose, three-part crucifix, two spines connected by a single ring. You add the bottom hoop next, identical to the top, creating a basic ladder shape. But a lantern isn't a ladder, it's a cylinder. This is where the magic of geometry and patience fuse. You now take the remaining ribs, each one slightly shorter than the last, and begin lashing them horizontally between the two vertical spines, starting just below the top hoop and working down. Each horizontal rib must be gently curved to match the eventual cylindrical shape, a curve you impart with subtle pressure from your thumbs as you tie. Each one must be perfectly spaced. There's no ruler. The measurement is the width of your finger, or sometimes a notched piece of wood used as a spacer. The process is hypnotic and tense. The frame starts to take on a three-dimensional form, a basket of light. As you work, you constantly sight down the emerging skeleton, squinting to see if any rib bows or dips out of alignment. A lantern must be perfectly symmetrical to fold correctly. One misaligned rib is a cancer that ruins the whole structure. Historians still argue whether the exquisite, modular precision of Edo-era crafts like lantern making was a philosophical expression of the natural world's order or simply the hard-won result of ruthless market competition, where a flawed product meant a lost customer in a crowded, hungry city. You're not thinking about philosophy or economics, though. You're thinking about the feel of the sinew against your thumb, the slight give of the bamboo as you tension the wrap, the tiny creak of a joint settling into place. The very best kawaito, it was whispered in some circles, didn't come from deer but from the tendons of executed criminals, said to be unnaturally strong and imbued with a lingering ki, or life energy. You doubt your supplier deals in such macabre materials, but the story is a reminder of the era's pragmatic, and often stark, relationship with the human and animal body. Nothing was wasted, in craft or in punishment. Finally, the last horizontal rib is lashed in place just above the bottom hoop. You lift the skeleton. It is astonishingly light, a ghost of a cage. You give it a gentle twist along its vertical axis. It talks slightly, then springs back. You press down on the top hoop, testing the collapsibility. With a soft rustle of bamboo on bamboo, the entire structure concertinas down, the hoops sliding along the spines until it's a flat disc. You release the pressure, and it springs back to its full shape with that iconic, satisfying sound. A smile touches your lips, the first of the day. The skeleton lives. It has memory, resilience, form. It's ready for its skin. But first, that skin must be chosen, a decision as crucial as the bones themselves. The skeleton, now a resilient ghost cage, hangs from a hook on a ceiling beam, swaying gently in a draft. It's a promise of light, but still just a promise. To fulfill it, you must clothe it. You turn from the world of hard, springy bamboo to the soft, silent domain of paper. Along one wall of your workshop are shelves stacked with neat, flat packages, each wrapped in its own sheet of coarse paper and tied with kumihimo cord. These are your bolts of washi, the handmade paper that is the soul of the lantern. Unwrapping one is an act of reverence. You undo the cord, peel back the protective sheet, and there it is, a pristine, creamy white rectangle, larger than a sleeping mat, so thin it seems to breathe on its own. Your fingers hover over the surface. Choosing the right paper is not a simple matter of grabbing the nearest sheet. This decision is weighted with cost, purpose, and a dash of superstition. The mainstream historical fact is that Edo period Japan had a sophisticated paper economy. There was paper for every conceivable use. Thick, resilient shoji paper for screens, delicate gampai for painting and calligraphy, and for lanterns, a specific grade that balanced translucency, strength, and affordability. Your best sheets come from the famous paper-making villages like Otaki, made from the inner bark of the kozo mulberry tree. This paper is strong, fibrous, and when properly treated, remarkably water-resistant. Your cheaper stock might be blended with bamboo pulp or even recycled paper scraps. The difference is felt in the hand and seen in the wallet. You run a thumb across the corner of a premium sheet. It has a gentle, cloth-like texture, a faint ripple from the screen it was formed on. You hold it up to the light from the open shoji. The world outside dissolves into a soft, golden haze, the silhouettes of people passing by becoming blurred, gentle shadows. This is the quality you need, the ability to diffuse and soften the raw, guttering flame of an oil candle into a gentle, welcoming glow. A cheaper, denser paper would cast a harsher, more localized light, marking you as a cut-rate craftsman. But the premium kozo paper costs. It's a calculus you perform in your head with every lantern. The price the merchant will pay, the prestige of the order, the wear on your own reputation. The omens. Paper, like bamboo, has a grain, a direction in which the fibers align during its making. To apply a sheet against its grain is to invite disaster, uneven stretching, premature tearing, a lantern that ages poorly. But beyond the physical grain, some older artisans spoke of a paper's sakigake, or omen. A sheet that rustled too loudly when unfolded might foretell a quarrelsome customer. A perfectly white sheet with a single, minuscule dark fleck of bark embedded in it, called a noko, was, depending on whom you asked, either a sign of authentic handmade quality or a cursed flaw that would draw the eye and ruin the aesthetic unity of the lit lantern. You examine your chosen sheet, not just for thickness and consistency, but for its feeling. Does it lie flat willingly, or does it curl at the edges with a stubborn energy? You are, in a very real sense, reading its personality before you commit it to the frame. You carry the large sheet to your pasting bench, a wide, low table scrupulously cleaned and slightly angled towards you. You smooth it out, using a clean, damp cloth to ease out any minor wrinkles. It's a vast, blank landscape. From the ceiling hook, you carefully take down the bamboo skeleton. You lay it on its side on top of the paper, like a patient on a bed. This is the moment of mapping. With a piece of finely pointed charcoal, you trace the outline of the frame onto the paper, leaving a generous margin for wrapping and overlap. You need to cut 2 identical panels, one for the front, one for the back. The precision of this tracing is paramount. A panel cut too small leaves gaps. One cut too large creates bulky, ugly folds that won't lay flat when glued. Your Hassie scissors, long-bladed and sharp, whisper through the paper. The sound is a crisp, decisive sigh. You cut along your charcoal lines, freeing the first panel. You flip the skeleton and repeat the process for the second. 2 ghost shapes now lie on your bench, the negative space of the lantern soon to be filled. You glance at the glue pot. It's time. The paper is chosen, the panels are cut. The peaceful, preparatory phase is over. Now you enter the most tense, fluid, and unforgiving stage of the entire process. The paper stretching, where seconds count and a single clumsy move renders hours of meticulous work worthless. The air in the workshop changes. The gentle simmer of the glue pot, the soft rustle of paper, they are now the prelude to a high-wire act. You position everything you'll need within arm's reach. The 2 cut paper panels, a wide, flat paste brush with its bristles now clean and springy, a bowl of clean water with a smaller brush, a damp cloth, and the bamboo skeleton, resting on its side like a beached ribcage. You give the glue a final stir. It's at the perfect, honey-like consistency, threads forming and breaking on the surface like molten gold. This is it. No hesitations, no second chances. You take the first paper panel and lay it flat on your angled pasting bench. With the smaller brush dipped in clean water, you quickly, lightly dampen the edges of the paper. Not too much, just enough to relax the fibers and prevent them from soaking up the thick glue too fast and buckling. It's a trick you learned after ruining 3 sheets in a row as an apprentice, watching them pucker into useless, lumpy landscapes. Now, you dip the white paste brush into the warm glue. It comes up heavy, dripping. You tap it against the rim of the pot to shed the excess. Then in one fluid, sweeping motion, you coat the entire surface of the paper with a thin, even layer. The sound is a swift, sticky sh. The paper instantly darkens as the glue soaks in, becoming translucent and slightly elastic. The smell of Nikawa blooms, strong and organic. Time accelerates. You have perhaps a minute before the glue begins to tack up, becoming unworkable. You lift the paper, a large, floppy, sticky rectangle. It wants to fold onto itself. You fight its weight and instinct as you bring it over to the waiting bamboo skeleton. Aligning it is a feat of spatial reasoning and muscle memory. The top edge must kiss the top hook perfectly. You lay it down, the glue side meeting the bamboo. The second it makes contact, it's committed. There's no sliding it around to adjust. Your left hand holds it in place at the top while your right hand, wielding the damp cloth, begins to smooth the paper outward and downward, over the curve of the horizontal ribs. This is where the touch becomes everything. Too much pressure with the cloth and you'll tear the wet, vulnerable paper. Too little, and it won't adhere, leaving a fatal air bubble or a loose pocket that will sag and wrinkle when dry. You work in swift, firm strokes, from the center spine outward, stroking the paper onto the bamboo like you're gentling a nervous animal. The paper stretches, conforming to the curved ribs. You hear tiny, creaking sounds as the fibers tension. You pull it taut, but not drum tight, that comes later. Your focus is absolute. The world narrows to this rectangle of sticky light, your hands, and the emerging shape beneath the cloth. You're not thinking, you're doing, a flow state where your body knows the motions better than your mind does. You reach the vertical spine on the other side and smooth the paper's edge onto it. Then comes the delicate work of the margins. The excess paper flaps at the sides. You fold these over the spine, pasting them down to create a clean, strong seam. You use the tip of a thin bone tool to tuck the paper neatly into the joint where the hoop meets the spine, ensuring no raw edge is exposed. The first panel is on. You step back for a half-second, breathing hard, your heart hammering against your ribs. You check for catastrophic flaws, a major tear, a glaring bubble. Seeing none, you immediately turn, reload your paste brush, and repeat the entire frantic, precise ballet with the second panel on the opposite side. Historians still argue whether the pressure of such make-or-break, time-sensitive processes in pre-industrial crafts created a unique form of stress-related community, where artisans bonded over shared, silent panic, or whether it simply bred isolated, ulcer-plagued masters who guarded their speed secrets jealously. As you smooth the final edge of the second panel, sealing the lantern's body shut, you might lean towards the latter. Many lantern makers kept a secret weapon for this stage, a smooth, oval river stone, warmed by the hibachi. After the initial cloth smoothing, they would use the warm stone to burnish the paper from the inside through the bamboo frame, pressing out the tiniest air pockets and ensuring an impossibly smooth, drum-like finish. Your stone rests on the edge of the hibachi now, waiting for its moment. Finally, it's done. You set down your tools. In your hands, you hold not a skeleton, but a nascent lantern. It's wet, sagging slightly, incredibly fragile. The paper is a murky, translucent brown from the glue, obscuring the bamboo within. It looks helpless, like a newborn creature. But the structural truth is there. The form is sealed, the seams are tight. You exhale a breath you didn't know you were holding. The most dangerous 5 minutes of your day are over. But the anxiety is far from finished. Now, you must give this vulnerable, damp creation to the most fickle master of all, the air itself. The wet lantern is a creature of profound vulnerability. You cannot set it down on any surface, it would stick and deform. You cannot touch its paper skin again until it's dry. So you perform a familiar, careful ritual. From the rafters, you unhook a long, slender bamboo pole, smooth as silk from years of use. This is your drying rack. You gently slide one end through the top hoop of the lantern, letting the weight of the frame settle halfway down the pole. You lift the pole and cradle the other end on a forked wooden stand in the corner of your workshop, a space reserved for this sole purpose. The lantern now hangs suspended in midair, a paper ghost turning slowly in the faint currents of the room. You hang a second, then a third freshly pasted lantern beside it. They form a silent, damp choir. And now, you wait. But waiting is not passive. It's an active, nervous vigil. Your entire attention turns to the environment. The workshop's climate is now your enemy and your ally. Edo sits in a humid basin. The air today is thick, promising rain. This is terrible news. Paper dries by evaporation, and humidity slows that process to a crawl. A lantern that dries too slowly can develop mildew, faint, blue-green blooms of fungus that eat into the paper, leaving permanent, weak stains. Worse, the glue can sour, losing its bond and giving the finished product a faint, rotten smell no customer will accept. You glance at the sky through the open screen. Clouds are gathering, washing the light a flat gray. You have methods, of course. This is a mainstream historical fact of pre-industrial craft. Artisans were amateur meteorologists and microclimate engineers. To encourage airflow, you slide open every shoji screen and the main wooden lattice door, creating a cross breeze. But you can't create wind. So you pick up a large, flat fan made of woven reed. You position yourself a respectful distance from the hanging lanterns and begin to fan them with long, steady strokes. You're not trying to create a gale that would dust them with debris or make them swing violently and tear. You're creating a gentle, consistent river of air, coaxing the moisture out. The motion is monotonous, a physical prayer for good drying conditions. Your shoulder begins to ache, but you don't stop. This is part of the work. The smell in the room evolves. The sharp, pungent odor of wet glue begins to recede, replaced by the subtler, earthier scent of evaporating water from paper. You watch the lanterns like a hawk. As the paper dries, it tightens. This is the critical phase where it gains its final, drumskin tension. You listen. A perfectly drying lantern will emit a series of tiny, almost musical pops and creaks as the paper contracts over the bamboo frame. It's a good sound. It means the bond is strong and the tension is even. Silence is suspicious. A single, loud crack is a disaster. It means the paper has dried too fast in one spot and split, a fatal flaw. You fan and you listen, your eyes tracing every square inch of the surface for the dreaded shadow of a wrinkle that won't smooth out. Many craftsmen harbored superstitions about what they could or couldn't do while their work dried. Some believed that whistling in the workshop would summon a mischievous breeze that would ruin the drying. Others thought that facing the lanterns directly while eating was disrespectful to the materials, inviting bad luck. You might find yourself avoiding certain words or actions, not out of strong belief, but from a sense of why risk it. After all, your entire livelihood for the day is hanging from those poles, at the mercy of invisible forces. Hours pass. The light shifts. The promised rain holds off, but the humidity remains. You take breaks from fanning to work on other tasks, sorting materials, repairing tools, but your attention always returns to the hanging forms. You test one by very gently flicking the paper with your fingernail. Early on, it thuds dully. Now, it responds with a slightly higher, tighter note. It's working. But they are not ready for the next stage, not by a long shot. They must be bone dry, to the core. Historians still argue whether the drying process, this forced inactivity punctuated by intense vigilance, represented a form of medieval slow time fundamentally lost to the modern world, or was simply a tedious, nerve-wracking bottleneck in any artisan's productivity. Right now, feeling the ache in your fanning arm and the knot of worry in your stomach, you'd vote for the latter. Finally, as the afternoon light begins to slant, you see it. The paper has lost all its murky translucency, returning to its original creamy off-white color. It looks taut, strong. You stop fanning and let the still, heavy air settle. You wait another half hour, just to be sure. Then, with the utmost care, you reach out and touch the surface of one lantern. It is cool. It is dry. It is firm as a stretched hide. A wave of relief washes through you, so potent it feels like warmth. The vulnerable phase is over. The lanterns have survived their infancy. Now, they must be made hardy for the world, sealed against the very elements you just prayed to for aid. The dry lanterns are strong now, but naked. Their paper skin is porous, vulnerable to the slightest splash of rain, a rogue drop of oil, or the greasy touch of a careless hand. To become true choching, vessels of protected light, they need their final skin, the sealant. You bring the dried lanterns down from their poles, handling them with a new confidence. They feel light and crisp, like giant, geometric seed pods. You place one on your bench and retrieve your next set of alchemical ingredients. From a sealed stoneware jar, you scoop a measure of pure, white powder into a clean ceramic bowl. This is funori, a seaweed glue. Unlike the animal-based nikawa, funori is clear and dries to a hard, waterproof gloss. It's the final barrier. But funori alone is brittle. It needs a plasticizer, something to give it flexibility and enhance its luminous quality. And here is where you reach for the most surprising, ubiquitous, and oddly domestic ingredient in your entire process: persimmon juice. Not just any juice, but kakishibu, the fermented, tannin-rich juice of unripe, astringent persimmons. It's a deep, ruddy brown, the color of old blood or strong tea. This stuff is the miracle worker of traditional Japanese craft, used for everything from waterproofing paper and cloth to preserving wood and, in some folk remedies, as a supposed cure for hangovers. You mix the funori powder with a little warm water, stirring until it becomes a clear, slimy gel. Then, you slowly add the kakishibu, watching as the mixture transforms into a rich, opaque, caramel brown liquid. This is your dosa, the coating lacquer. Its smell is astringent, earthy, completely different from the animal funk of the nikawa. You prepare a fresh, soft brush. The application of the dosa is the opposite of the frantic paper stretching. This is a slow, meditative, and supremely messy act. You prop the lantern on a small turntable you've fashioned from a wooden disc. Dipping your brush, you begin to paint the sealant onto the paper in long, even, overlapping strokes. The thirsty paper drinks it in, darkening instantly from cream to a warm, amber honey brown. This is the iconic color of a traditional choching. As you rotate the lantern and paint, the transformation is magical. The paper seems to deepen, to gain substance and richness. The brush strokes vanish as the liquid soaks in, leaving a smooth, unified surface. You coat the entire exterior, top to bottom, paying special attention to the seams and edges where moisture would first attack. You work methodically, coating one lantern after another, your hands and forearms soon speckled with the persistent brown stain of kakishibu, a badge of your trade that will take days to wear off. Here's a mainstream historical fact. The use of kakishibu represents a brilliant, sustainable adaptation of available natural resources. The astringent persimmon was inedible in its unripe state, so using its juice for waterproofing was a stroke of zero-waste genius. It produced a durable, flexible, and mildly antimicrobial coating that made paper lanterns surprisingly resilient, able to withstand the elements for months or even years. Historians still argue whether the specific recipes for dosa, the exact ratios of funori to kakishibu, were the most closely guarded secrets of a lantern-making family, more valuable than the techniques of frame building themselves. As the first coated lantern begins to dry, a much faster process than the glue, you notice another change. The paper, now impregnated with the tannins, becomes slightly translucent again, but in a richer, warmer way. It glows when you hold it up to the light, like a fragment of an autumn leaf held to the sun. This is the final aesthetic touch, the beautiful, warm, welcoming light it will cast. For the wealthiest clients or temples, a touch of precious gold leaf or silver powder was sometimes mixed into the final coat of dosa. When a candle was lit inside such a lantern, it wouldn't just glow. It would sparkle and shimmer, casting tiny, dancing points of reflected light like a captured starfield. Your current batch is for a merchant, not a daimyo, so you use the standard mix. But you imagine it sometimes, the luxury of painting with light itself. You finish coating the last lantern. The workshop now smells sharply of fermented persimmon and drying seaweed. A row of beautiful amber-brown cylinders stands on your bench, still slightly damp to the touch. They are no longer mere paper and bamboo constructs. They are now functional objects, ready for service. They have been born, nurtured through fragility, and armored against the world. A deep sense of satisfaction settles in your chest, momentarily eclipsing the fatigue in your shoulders and the stain on your hands. You've made something. But the making is only half the story. Soon, you must transition from creator to salesman, and the man who decides the value of your sweat and skill is about to arrive. The satisfaction of the finished lanterns is still warm in your hands when you hear the distinctive, double knock pattern on your wooden shop lattice, tap 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 tap. It's not a customer. It's Yusuja-san, the wholesaler. Your mood tightens, shifting from the quiet pride of creation to the sharp focus of commerce. You wipe your kakishibu-stained hands on a rag as best you can and slide open the door. Yusuja-san fills the doorway, not with bulk, but with presence. He's a compact man in a neat, dark kosode and hakama, his hair oiled and tied back. He carries a ledger and a small, worn abacus tucked into his sash. He doesn't smile, but he gives a shallow, efficient nod. "Good afternoon," he says, his eyes already sliding past you to the row of amber lanterns on your bench. He is the vital link between your solitary workshop and the vast, consuming mouth of Edo. "Welcome, Yusuja-san," you say, stepping aside to let him in. The dance begins. He moves to the bench, but doesn't touch the lanterns immediately. He circles them, his gaze clinical. He's looking for what you hope he won't find: a hairline split in the paper, a slight asymmetry in the frame, a patch where the dosa is uneven. He picks one up, his movements surprisingly gentle for a man of business. He tests its weight, then, with a practiced flick of his wrist, collapses it flat. He listens to the sound of the bamboo, the smoothness of the action. He lets it spring back and holds it up, squinting at the seams. He does this with 3 different lanterns from the batch. You stand silently, your heart a muted drum in your chest. Your entire morning and afternoon are being judged in these few, silent moments. Finally, he speaks. The work is acceptable. It's not praise, it's a statement of fact, the opening bid in a negotiation where the price was never truly set beforehand. This is the mainstream reality of Edo period commerce for artisans. You rarely sold directly to the public. You sold to middlemen like Yusuji, who supplied the street vendors, the tea houses, the festival committees, and the countless households of the city. Your survival depended on your relationship with him, his assessment of your consistency, and his need to fill his own orders. He sets down the lantern. The market is soft, he states, opening his ledger. The Matsuri season is over. Everyone has lanterns. And the paper from Otaki has increased in price again. He sighs, a performance of shared hardship. You know this script. You must play your part. You nod sympathetically. The kakishibu was also of poor quality this year, you counter, gesturing to your stained hands. It required double the amount to achieve a proper seal. And the bamboo, it took twice as long to split without flaw. You are not lying, but you are curating the truth, building the case for your labor's value. He taps his abacus, beads clicking like insect chatter. He names a price per lantern. It is, as expected, insultingly low. You name a counter price, higher than you expect to get. The haggling begins. It is a ritual of offer and parry, conducted in low, respectful tones, filled with appeals to long-standing partnership and grim nods about the difficulties of the times. Historians still argue whether this complex system of credit and negotiation, centered on trust and reputation, Johin, was a more humane form of pre-capitalist economics or merely a different kind of bondage that kept artisans perpetually in debt to their suppliers and buyers. Yusuji-san might, as a sign of goodwill or as a subtle pressure tactic, present you with a small, unrelated gift, a packet of good tea, a bundle of high-quality writing brushes. This wasn't a bribe, but a yorozu, a 10,000 thing, a token of ongoing relationship. To refuse it would be a grave insult. To accept it obligated you to a degree of loyalty and perhaps a slightly more favorable price next time. It wove a social fabric that was as strong as any contract. After 10 minutes of quiet, intense conversation, you reach a number. It is less than you hoped, but more than his first offer. You both bow slightly, sealing the agreement. He notes the quantity in his ledger and extends credit. You won't see actual coin until the end of the month, and even then, it might be deducted against your ongoing purchases of bamboo and paper from his network of suppliers. He signals to his 2 assistants waiting outside, who enter and carefully pack the lanterns into large, rope-handled wooden boxes lined with straw. In minutes, the products of your day's toil are gone, carried off into the stream of the city. Your workshop feels suddenly, emptily quiet. Yusuji-san prepares to leave, then pauses at the threshold. The Ryogo Festival Committee may place a large order for next month, he says, offhandedly. 100 pieces. Standard design. Can your workshop handle it? It's not a promise, it's a test. You keep your face neutral, but your mind races. 100 lanterns would require help, would mean long nights, would strain your material credit. But it would also mean survival and reputation. This workshop is at your service, you say, the formal phrase hiding a whirlwind of calculation. He nods once more and is gone. You are left alone with the smell of persimmon, the dust of bamboo, and the faint, lingering ghost of a potential future. The departure of Yusuji-san and your lanterns leaves a void in the workshop, both physical and mental. The tense focus of negotiation dissipates, and in its place arrives a hollow, gnawing sensation in your stomach. It's past midday. The city's rhythm has entered its brief, bustling lull. The frantic morning chores are done, the evening revelries haven't begun. It's time for lunch, a meal dictated strictly by your station. You bank the fire in the hibachi, leaving just enough coals to simmer a small pot of rice you set earlier. Your main meal, however, won't come from your own larder. You wash your hands in a basin, the water turning a murky brown from the kakishibu, and step out into your lane. The atmosphere has changed since the grey morning. The sun has broken through, steam rising from damp thatch. The air is now a tapestry of competing smells. The miso from next door, the sharp vinegar from a pickle seller's cart, the fatty, intoxicating aroma of grilling eel from a street stall 2 blocks over, a scent you can't afford but that taunts you daily. You walk a short distance to a familiar stall, a movable wooden cart with a cloth canopy. The proprietor, an elderly woman with 4 arms like knotted rope, nods as you approach. This is where the shoning of your means eat. There's no sitting down. You eat standing at the stall or take your food back to your workshop. The options are simple, cheap, and designed to fill the belly of a laboring man. You point to a large lacquered box. She lifts the lid, revealing today's offering, a mound of steamed barley rice, topped with a spoonful of simmered daikon radish and a single, small piece of dried, salty washi sardine. It's unglamorous, but it's protein, carbohydrates, and salt, fuel. You hand over a few thinly cast mon coins, the transaction swift and silent. Back in your workshop, you sit on the stoop, the open door at your back. You eat quickly, mechanically. The barley is chewy, the radish soft and slightly sweet, the fish a pungent boast of salt and sea. This is the mainstream historical diet of the Edo commoner, based around rice, or barley, to stretch it, pickled vegetables, tofu, small fish, and seaweed. Meat from 4-legged animals was effectively banned for much of the period due to Buddhist edicts and sumptuary laws, though wild game like boar was slyly marketed as mountain whale. Your meal is a direct reflection of your social class, your location in the city, and the season. It's adequate. It is not enjoyable in a modern sense. It is functional. As you eat, you watch the lane. A pair of samurai, their 2 swords at their waists, stride past, their straw sandals whispering on the dirt. They don't glance at you. You are part of the scenery, a fixtures and fittings of the city they are sworn to protect and police. A vendor pushes a cart piled high with fragrant, yellow yuzu fruits, calling out his price. A group of children chase a bamboo hoop, their shouts echoing off the close walls. This is your world in microcosm, vibrant, crowded, stratified, and alive with 1,000 tiny transactions just like the one you made for your lunch. For the truly adventurous or desperate, there were stalls that sold unconventional fare. Some specialized in yakitori not of chicken, but of sparrows, skewered whole. Others, near the river, might offer skewers of grilled koa, river shellfish, or even anago, grasshoppers, boiled in soy sauce and sugar. These were the protein sources of the truly poor or the daring Epicurean. Your sardine feels positively luxurious in comparison. You finish the last grain of barley, licking the salty residue from your fingers. The meal has done its job. The hollow feeling is gone, replaced by a solid, if unexciting, fullness. Historians still argue whether the incredible variety and specialization of Edo's street food, with vendors selling only one type of dish perfected over a lifetime, was a triumph of urban market efficiency or a sign of a fragile economy that forced people into hyper-specialized niches just to survive. As you watch the pickle seller sharpen his knife on a stone, you suspect it's a bit of both. The pot of rice on your hibachi is done. You'll save that for the evening, to be stretched into a thin gruel with some greens. Lunch is over. The break, such as it was, has ended. The afternoon awaits, and it won't be spent at your pasting bench. You have errands to run, a foray into the pulsing, chaotic heart of the city beyond your quiet lane. You need supplies, and you need to settle a debt. The workshop will be empty for a few hours, a thought that brings its own low-grade anxiety. You leave your workshop, sliding the wooden lattice door shut but not locking it, a token of trust in your immediate neighbors, or perhaps a naive one. The lane is a familiar tunnel, but as you turn onto the main thoroughfare, the world erupts. This is Nihonbashi, the bridge and the district that serves as the commercial and psychological heart of Edo. The noise is a physical force, a cacophony of shouted advertisements, the creak and rumble of wooden-wheeled Daihatsu carts, the clatter of jito on stone, the bleat of livestock being driven to market. The crowd is a river you must merge into, a dense flow of humanity in every possible attire, merchants in somber robes, laborers in short happy coats, porters bent double under enormous loads, the occasional veiled woman of means carried in a palanquin, parting the crowd like a ship's prow. Your first destination is the paper wholesaler, located in a warren of shops under the shadow of the bridge itself. You move with purpose, but also with a practiced defensive agility. You dodge a porter balancing a tower of lacquer boxes. You sidestep a puddle of dubious origin. A street performer, a kamakiri, paper cutter, is surrounded by a rapt crowd, snipping intricate silhouettes in a flash. You don't stop. This is the floating world, the ukiyo, in its raw, daytime form, not the nighttime world of pleasure and poetry, but the grinding, vibrant engine of commerce that makes the night possible. The air is thick with smells, the tang of the open Suez Canal, the perfume of incense from a nearby temple, the aroma of frying tempura, the pungent bite of drying fish, the sweet scent of roasting sweet potatoes from a cart. You reach the paper merchant stall, a narrow frontage opening onto a deep, cave-like storehouse stacked to the ceiling with bales. The proprietor knows you, knows your credit is tied to Yusuji-san. You discuss the order for next month, the potential order. You must secure the paper now, on promise, or risk it being sold to a rival maker if the festival commission comes through. It's another delicate dance of obligation and future promise. You leave with a promise of your own and a small, complimentary sample of a new, slightly cheaper washi blend to test. You tuck the paper into the fold of your kimono. Your next stop is for bamboo. Not the whole poles, but pre-split warigo of a specific gauge from a specialist cutter in the adjoining district. This saves you a half day of splitting and planing, a calculated trade-off of cost for time. As you walk, you pass the open front of a sword polisher, the rhythmic shush-shush of stone on steel, a metallic whisper amidst the din. You pass a public notice board plastered with thick, printed Kawaraban broadsheets, the Edo-era equivalent of tabloid news, filled with scandals, natural disasters, and shogunate decrees. A small crowd is gathered, listening to a man with a compelling voice read the text aloud for the illiterate. You catch a phrase about a new regulation on firewatch rotations. You file it away. Fire is always relevant. You had to be wary of more than just pickpockets. The Teppo Tamabo or bullet priests were a known nuisance, fraudsters who would accidentally bump into you, drop a supposedly sacred bullet or amulet, and then demand payment for the damaged sacred object. Another scam involved mizu shobai, water trade, touts for unlicensed brothels or gambling dens, who would whisper offers to lone men, trying to pull them into alleyways. You keep your gaze ahead, your posture suggesting you're not to be delayed. Historians still argue whether the intense, sensory overload experience of Edo's streets, for a common townsman like you, was a form of exhilarating freedom, a democracy of chaos, or simply a daily exercise in stress and survival, where every excursion carried risk of accident, crime, or disease. As a bucket of slops is tossed from a second-story window, landing with a splash just ahead of you, you lean towards the latter interpretation. You complete your purchases, the materials for tomorrow's work now secured on credit. But one more duty remains, a less tangible one. You turn your steps toward a quieter street, to the small tenement where your former apprentice, a young man named Kichiro, now lives with his ailing mother. He left your workshop 6 months ago to care for her, and you still front him small finishing jobs, painting characters onto lanterns for shops, to help him get by. You collect the 3 he's finished and hand over a few coins, a transaction wrapped in the silent language of obligation and kindness. The social web, in Edo, is also a safety net, and you are both a strand and a knot within it. With the sun beginning its descent, casting long shadows through the packed streets, you turn for home. The workshop calls. The lanterns for tomorrow need their bones. You return to your lane as the sky begins to soften from hard blue to a dusty rose. The frantic energy of the main arteries recedes, replaced by the settling sounds of the quarter, the chop of knives preparing evening meals, the call of mothers summoning children, the sizzle of fish hitting pans. The smell of your own simmering rice gruel greets you as you slide open your door, a simple, starchy comfort. But your workday is far from over. The finite daylight is gone, and now you enter the domain of lamplight and close, familial labor. You stir the pot over the hibachi, then light your first proper light of the evening, a simple andan, a standing paper lantern you made years ago. Its warm, amber glow pushes back the shadows in your main room, carving out a small island of visibility in the encroaching dark. This is the signal. From the rear of the house, your wife, Hannah, emerges, followed by your 2 children, a boy of 10 and a girl of 7. Their faces are calm, ready. This is the daily transition from the solitary craft of the day to the collective industry of the evening. No words are needed. They know their roles. Hannah brings a basket of finished lantern frames, ones you assembled yesterday and left to season. She settles near the andan with a pot of black sumi ink and a set of fine brushes. Her task is lettering. Many of the lanterns you produce are generic, but a good number are commissioned by shops, bathhouses, or restaurants, requiring their name or a short motto to be painted in elegant kanji on the paper. Hannah's hand is steady, her calligraphy far superior to your own functional strokes. She dips her brush, concentrates, and begins. Each character is an act of precision, the black ink blooming slightly into the dosa-sealed paper. The children's job is preparation and cleanup. Your son trims the wicks for the small, ceramic oil dishes that will sit inside the lanterns. Your daughter carefully cleans the soot from the glass chimneys of the few, more expensive enclosed lanterns you sometimes make. Their movements are small, careful, a quiet apprenticeship in the family trade. This is the mainstream historical reality of the IE, the household unit in Edo, Japan. It was an economic entity as much as a familial one. Every capable member contributed to its sustenance. Your workshop isn't a separate space, it's the heart of your home, and its rhythm dictates your family's life. The soft scratch of Hannah's brush, the snip of your son's scissors, the gentle clink of glass as your daughter wipes. These are the sounds of your household at work. There is conversation, but it's low, pertaining to the task. The boy might ask about a character Hannah is painting. Your daughter might show you a particularly stubborn smudge of soot. The day's tensions, the haggling with Yusuji, the chaos of the streets, melt away in this pool of gentle, shared purpose. The very act of working by lantern light to make more lanterns created a beautiful, almost paradoxical meta-scene. The light from the andan illuminates Hannah's hands as she paints characters advertising izakaya taiju or sento-yu. You are literally using the product of your craft to create more of the same product, a self-sustaining loop of light and labor. In the flickering glow, the half-finished lanterns around the room cast giant, dancing shadows on the paper walls, a puppet show of your own making. Historians still argue whether this model of family-based craft production stifled individual ambition and innovation by locking children into hereditary trades, or whether it provided a profound sense of identity, security, and the seamless transfer of uncodified knowledge. Watching your son carefully coil a wick, his brow furrowed in imitation of your own concentration, you feel it is likely both. He is learning a future, but it is the only future your world has readily offered him. You, meanwhile, move to your own evening task. Using the last of the daylight from the open door, you begin the initial splitting of bamboo for tomorrow's frames. The thwack of your knife, the crisp pop of the splits, provide a percussive background to the softer sounds of your family's work. It's a symphony of making. The rice gruel is ready. You all pause. Bowls are filled. You eat where you sit, in the circle of light, the tools of your trade momentarily still. The food is plain, hot, and shared. For a moment, there is no artisan, no wife, no apprentices, just a family, gathered in a small island of warmth they have built together, surrounded by the skeletal ghosts of future lights. Soon, the bowls are washed, and the quiet work resumes, until the children's eyelids grow heavy and the yawns can no longer be stifled. Only then does Hannah usher them to the back room for sleep. You and she work a little longer, in a companionable silence, until the last character is painted, the last wick trimmed. The night watch is about to begin, and it is yours alone. Hannah extinguishes the andon in the main room, plunging your living space into a darkness relieved only by the faint, orange glow from the banked hibachi coals. She retires to the back with the children. The house settles into the deep, breathing silence of sleep. But for you, the day's final, most solemn duty begins. You are now the sentinel. You take a last, slow walk through your workshop. Your senses, dulled by the long hours, are now painfully acute in the dark. Your ears strain past the soft snores from the back room. You listen to the night sounds, the scuttle of a rat in the ceiling thatch, the distant, lonely call of a night watchman 2 blocks over, the occasional bark of a dog. But you are listening for other things, the furtive scrape of a foot on dirt, the subtle click of a latticed door being tested. Edo is a city of wood and paper, and its twin specters are fire and theft. Your entire existence is a testament to both. You are a creator of beautiful, flammable objects, and your stock of materials, while not precious metal, represents capital, food, survival. You begin your ritual of security. First, fire. You double-check the hibachi, using iron chopsticks to bury the last embers deep in ash, creating an airtight tomb for the day's heat. You scan the floor for any stray bamboo shavings or paper scraps that might have drifted near a heat source. You ensure the ceramic lid is firmly on the water jar. Water is the first defense. Then, you move to the front. The main wooden lattice door is already shut. You slide a heavy, polished wooden bar through its brackets, a simple, effective lock. You test it, putting your weight against the door. It holds firm. The shoji screens are latched from the inside with small wooden hooks. But you're not done. You go to a corner and lift a long pole with a metal hook on the end. Your matoir is for grabbing roof thatch, but it also serves as a tool for checking shadows. You use it to gently tap the ceiling in various spots, listening for the solid thump of the roof beams, ensuring no tiles are loose, no entry point has been compromised. Historians still argue whether the pervasive fear of fire in Edo, leading to these obsessive nightly routines, created a population with a collective anxiety disorder or fostered an unparalleled community vigilance and preparedness that defined urban life. As you peer into every dark corner, your heart a steady, anxious drum. You feel the former in your gut, even as you perform the latter. Many artisans, especially those with valuable tools or secret recipes, employed psychological deterrents as much as physical ones. It was common to paint eyes on the inside of shutters or to place a pair of old, worn-out jita, wooden sandals, just inside the door, suggesting a large, vigilant man was home. Some even kept a bowl of uncooked rice by the entrance. The theory was a thief would step in it, leaving telltale grains that would track through the city and lead to his capture. You don't use the rice trick, but you do have a particular arrangement of your bamboo offcuts just inside the door, a pattern only you know. If they are disturbed in the morning, you'll know. Your final check is to your most vital tools. Your planes, your special knives, the stone for smoothing, these are extensions of your body, their edges maintained with religious care. They are also valuable. You don't lock them away, they are in their place on your workbench. But you lay a single, long strand of hair across the handles of your two finest blades. It's invisible in the dark. In the morning, you will see if it is still there, untouched. This is your personal, silent alarm. Satisfied, or as satisfied as you can be, you finally allow yourself to move towards your own rest. But even now, you pause by the one lantern you didn't sell today, a small, collapsible choching with a minor, almost invisible flaw in the paper near the seam, a piece you'll keep for household use. On an impulse, you take a flint and steel from a shelf. You strike a spark onto a pinch of dried moss, nurse it into a tiny flame on a sliver of wood, and use it to light the small oil lamp inside the lantern. You don't lift it. You simply let it sit on the floor in the middle of the dark, empty workshop. It casts a perfect, warm circle of light on the tatami, pushing the deep shadows to the walls. You sit in the darkness just outside its glow, watching it. This is the purest form of your work, not a product for sale, not a chore, but light itself. A small, defiant, beautiful stand against the overwhelming dark of the night and the city. You watch the flame dance, steady behind its paper shield, until your eyes grow too heavy to stay open. Only then do you rise, extinguish it with a pinch, and finally, seek your own futon. Darkness, thick and complete. The fragile thread of sleep is severed not by a sound, but by an absence. The deep, rhythmic breathing from your children's corner of the room has changed. You are awake instantly, eyes open in the black, your body rigid on the thin futon. You hear it now, a shallow, wet, struggling rasp. It's your daughter, Sochi. You on your feet before your mind has fully formed the thought, your hand finding Hannah's shoulder in the dark. She's already awake, her own body taut with listening. You scramble for the flint and steel, your fingers clumsy with sleep and sudden dread. The spark seems to take an eternity. Finally, the tinder catches. You light a stub of a candle, its meager light revealing Sochi sitting up, her small face pale, her eyes wide with a fear she doesn't understand as she fights for air. The sound is terrible, a whooping intake followed by a strangled cough. Croup. Or something worse. The cold, damp air of the workshop, the ever-present dust, they've claimed a victim in the night. All thoughts of the workshop, of Yusuja-san, of lanterns, vanish. There is only this small, struggling life in a city with no hospitals, no emergency rooms, no doctors who would come to a lantern maker's home in the dead of night. This is the reality check that underpins every moment of your existence. Your craft can build beauty, but it cannot ward off the microscopic armies that besiege your children. The infant mortality rate in Edo is staggering. You've buried one already, a tiny son who never saw his first summer. That memory is a cold stone in your chest, now grinding against your ribs. Hannah is already moving, practical in her panic. She bundles Sochi in blankets, holding her upright to ease the breathing. Steam, she says, her voice tight. You nod, the mainstream historical remedy flashing in your mind, the one thing you can do. You stumble back to the workshop, to the hibachi. You blow the ashes away from the buried embers, feeding them slivers of wood until a small, quick fire blossoms. You fill your iron kettle and set it directly on the flames. You need the room to fill with warm, moist air. But the workshop is large, drafty. It will take too long. You look around, your eyes landing on the very thing you make. You grab a large, unfinished lantern frame, one without paper, just the bare bamboo skeleton. You invert it, creating a large cage. You drag the hibachi with the now singing kettle into the sleeping area, a dangerous breach of all your own fire safety rules. You place the lantern frame over the hibachi, then drape every spare blanket and quilt you own over the frame, creating a makeshift steam tent. You, Hannah, and Sochi huddle under it, the air quickly growing hot, thick, and damp with the boiling kettle's output. It's claustrophobic, dangerous, and your only hope. While you wait for the steam to work, Hannah might whisper a prayer or a folk charm. She might even, if things feel dire, reach for a small, folded paper ofuda, talisman, purchased from a local temple, pressing it to Sochi's forehead. Science and superstition are partners in the dark. You might consider sending for the Moxibustion woman at dawn, who would burn dried mugwort on specific points of Sochi's skin, a painful but respected treatment. Historians still argue whether the vast array of folk remedies and proto-medical practices of the period represented a sophisticated, alternative understanding of the body or was simply a chaotic, often cruel, theater of hope in the face of terrifying ignorance. Minutes stretch like hours under the blanket tent. Sochi's breathing is still ragged, but the terrifying whoop begins to soften, replaced by congested, wet coughing, a better sound. The steam is loosening the grip in her small chest. Her eyes droop, exhausted from the fight. Hannah rocks her, humming a tuneless lullaby. You tend the fire, ensuring the kettle doesn't boil dry. The fear doesn't leave you, but it recedes from a blinding panic to a cold, steady dread in your stomach. You will not sleep again tonight. You will watch the rise and fall of the blanket over her chest, counting each breath as if it were a priceless coin. The night's vulnerability has shifted from your property to your very bloodline. The lanterns outside could burn, your tools could be stolen, and it would be a disaster. But this is an abyss. As the first gray light begins to seep through the paper walls, revealing the chaotic, steam-filled room, the makeshift tent, the exhausted faces of your family, you understand the true economy of your life. The lanterns you make hold light for others. But here, in this room, you are fighting to preserve the only light that truly matters, with nothing but steam, a prayer, and a desperate, boundless love that your craft can never shape, and no merchant can ever price. The gray light of dawn doesn't so much arrive as it gradually saturates the exhausted air of your home. The steam tent has been taken down. The hibachi is back in the workshop, its fire safe and contained once more. Sochi sleeps, a true sleep now, her breathing a soft, ragged but steady rhythm. The crisis has passed, leaving behind a household hollowed out by fatigue and lingering fear. Hannah slumps beside the child, her own eyes closed, one hand resting on Sochi's chest, feeling the vital rise and fall. You move through the morning rituals like a ghost. You check the security hair on your tools, untouched. You inspect your bamboo offcut pattern, undisturbed. The night watch for thieves was uneventful. The Real invasion came from within. You perform the chores by rote, drawing water, rinsing rice, feeding the feeble fire. The usual morning sounds from the miso shop and the soba stall feel distant, muffled, as if you're hearing them from underwater. The adrenaline has drained, leaving a heavy, gritty exhaustion in every muscle. Yet, the city's demand is indifferent to your private vigil. The workshop must produce. Yusuji-san's potential order looms. The rice jar is not even half full. You have no choice. You step into the workshop. The first thing you see is the small, flawed lantern from last night, sitting extinguished where you left it. You pick it up. In the cool morning light, the minor flaw near the seam is obvious, a tiny ripple in the paper where the glue didn't take perfectly. Yesterday, it was a reject, not worthy of sale. Today, it feels like a companion, a silent witness to the night's struggle. You run your thumb over the flaw. It's part of its story now. You don't go to your pile of fresh bamboo. Not yet. Instead, you take the small lantern and your toolkit to the stoop. You sit in the gradually warming sun, its light still pale and weak. You examine the lantern not as a craftsman judging a product, but as a caretaker. You mix a tiny, fresh batch of glue, just a thimble's worth. With a needle-thin brush, you carefully work the glue under the edge of the flawed seam, coaxing it to adhere. You hold it in place, applying the slightest pressure. It's not about making it perfect for a customer. It's about making it whole for yourself. It's an act of repair in a world that constantly unravels. As you hold it, you think of the cycle you are part of, a cycle far older than the Tokugawa shogunate. You take the raw, growing things of the earth, bamboo from the mountains, pulp from the mulberry tree, tannin from the persimmon. You apply your knowledge, your labor, your tired hands, and you transform them into an object that holds and shapes something as intangible as light. You sell it so you can buy more of the earth's raw things, and food to fuel your labor, so you can do it again. It is a closed loop of necessity and beauty. The lantern you hold will now be your own. It will light your future evenings of work. It will maybe one day guide your son if he walks home after dark. Its flaw will not diminish its light. It will merely remind you where it almost came apart. Historians still argue whether the life of an Edo period artisan like you was one of soul-crushing drudgery, locked in a repetitive struggle for mere survival, or whether the deep, embodied knowledge of a craft, the feel of the grain, the smell of the glue, the sound of good split bamboo, provided a profound, unspoken sense of meaning and place in the cosmos. As you set the repaired lantern aside to dry, the sun finally touching its amber paper, you feel the truth is somewhere in the gluey, messy middle. It is drudgery. It is meaning. It is both, inseparably mixed like kakishibu and funori. You stand, your joints protesting. You hear Hana stirring inside, the soft clink of a pot. Sochi murmurs in her sleep. The day is insisting on itself. You walk back to your workbench. You pick up a fresh bamboo pole. You feel its cool, smooth skin under your palms. You take up your kiri blade, position it just past a node, and prepare to make the first split, to begin the cycle anew. The city buzzes outside your lane. A cart rolls by. Someone laughs. The sun climbs higher. You apply pressure, and with a crisp, fibrous snap, the day, and the work, begins again. The rhythm of your hands on the bamboo becomes the rhythm of the story's end. The sharp, defining sounds of your craft, the snap of the split, the shush of the plane, the sprowing of the frame, they begin to soften now, fading like echoes in a deepening valley. The smells, too, begin to dissipate. The sharp green scent of fresh shavings mellows into the memory of a forest. The pungent, organic tang of the glue pot wafts away on an imaginary breeze. The astringent bite of persimmon fades into the simple, clean smell of paper. The chaotic symphony of Edo's streets dwindles to a distant, murmuring stream, no longer a demand, but merely a reminder that the world continues, gently, elsewhere. See the lantern there, the one you just repaired, sitting on the stoop in a pool of sunlight? Watch as the light seems not to shine on it, but to gather within it, the paper warming from amber to a gentle, glowing gold. It holds the light without greed, offering it back softened, kinder. That is your legacy, not in ledgers or fame, but in these countless, quiet vessels of illumination you send out into the night. Each one a small, handheld moon, guiding a step, defining a space for conversation, marking a place of warmth in the vast, indifferent dark. And you, the maker, can rest now. The worries of the day, the haggling, the debts, the flawless seam, the trembling child, they all soften at the edges, blurring into the broad, quiet tapestry of a life lived in making. There is no more need to listen for the crack of drying paper or the knock of the merchant. There is only the gradual slowing of the heart, the deepening of the breath, matching the slow, patient growth of the bamboo in the hills, the silent maturation of the persimmon on the branch. The cycle will turn, as it always does, but for now, it turns without you. The light in the lantern is steady. The night is calm. Let the tools lie still. Let the hands unclench. Let the careful, weary mind finally release its vigil and drift on the quiet, knowing that tomorrow there will be light and there will be work to shape it by.